Right at this very second, an entire nation has gone dark. The internet cables have been severed, digital communications have vanished, and a complete blackout protocol has been initiated. If you turn on mainstream television right now, the anchors with their perfect hair are smiling. They are telling you that this digital darkness is a sign of ultimate victory, that the enemy is being sent back to the Stone Age, and that American superiority is prevailing without a single drop of consequence. But I need you to look closer. While the media is celebrating a swift, remote-controlled triumph, the smartest money on Wall Street is quietly rushing for the exits. Institutional investors are liquidating assets and shifting billions of dollars into defensive positions. Welcome back to Prism News. I am your host, and today we are pulling back the curtain on the greatest illusion of our time. The blackout you are witnessing is not a tactic to suppress local riots. It is a carefully engineered smokescreen designed to hide a terrifying reality from the American public. You are being told that we are conducting a clean, surgical, high-tech campaign. You are being told that taking down major bridges and neutralizing power grids will force a quick surrender. But the data tells a completely different story. According to terminal data from Bloomberg and quiet alerts from global risk management firms, the elite know exactly what is coming next, and it is not a victory parade. It is a slow, grinding, multi-trillion-dollar quagmire that is going to be funded directly from your savings account. We are about to uncover the real reason why the screens went blank, and more importantly, who is actually profiting while the middle class is sent the bill. Before we dive into the classified logistics and the hidden financial flows, I want you to ask yourself a question. If the situation is as perfectly under control as the politicians claim, why are defense contractors suddenly scaling up production for ground combat gear? The answer will change the way you view the evening news forever. Let us do some simple, brutal math. The kind of math that the Pentagon prays you never figure out. When you watch footage of an F-18 Super Hornet launching from the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, accompanied by KC-135 Stratotankers for mid-air refueling, it looks like a scene from an action movie. It inspires a profound sense of technological awe. But here is the cold financial reality behind that cinematic footage. Every single time one of those jets takes to the sky, it costs the American taxpayer tens of thousands of dollars per flight hour. When that jet releases a precision-guided munition to neutralize a target, that is hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars, vaporized in a fraction of a second. Now, look at the other side of the chessboard. Our adversaries are not using million-dollar systems. They are utilizing asymmetric warfare. They are launching cheap, mass-produced drones that cost roughly $35,000 apiece. When a $4 million Patriot missile is fired to intercept a $35,000 drone, who is really winning that engagement? The mainstream media calls it a successful interception. At PrismNews, we call it financial attrition. This is the core of the asymmetric bleed-out strategy. The goal of the opposition is not to defeat the United States military in a direct confrontation. That would be impossible. Their goal is to bankrupt the United States from within. Every bridge that is dismantled, every power plant that is neutralized in the Middle East, requires an astronomical expenditure of American capital. And where does that capital come from? It is printed by the Federal Reserve, which dilutes the purchasing power of the dollars in your wallet, or it is borrowed, adding to a national debt that is already spiraling out of control. The next time you go to the supermarket and wonder why a carton of eggs or a pound of beef is stretching your budget to the breaking point, I want you to remember the math of asymmetric warfare. You are not just paying for groceries. You are paying the invisible tax of a global empire that is bleeding out $1 million missile at a time. We need to have a very serious conversation about our so-called allies. For decades, the American public has been sold the beautiful narrative of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We are told that the West stands united, a formidable shield against global instability. But let us look at the raw, unfiltered reality of the current crisis in the Persian Gulf. Approximately 20% of the daily global supply of oil and liquid natural gas flows through the Strait of Hormuz. A massive portion of that energy is destined for European markets. It keeps the lights on in Paris, it powers the factories in Berlin, and it fuels the economy of London. Yet, as commercial cargo vessels are being damaged and the entire region stands on the brink of an unprecedented geopolitical shift, where is the European fleet? Where is the solidarity we have paid for over the last 70 years? The silence from the continent is deafening. The President of France and European diplomats are issuing carefully worded statements of concern, but they are absolutely refusing to commit their own resources, their own capital, or their own personnel to secure the very shipping lanes their economies depend upon. This is the Paris Betrayal. The United States is currently acting as the unpaid security guard for the European continent. We are deploying our carriers, risking our hardware, and most importantly, spending our taxpayer wealth to ensure that European citizens do not face an energy crisis. It is a monumental transfer of wealth from the American working class to the European elite. The Wall Street Journal recently highlighted the growing frustration within certain military circles regarding this extreme imbalance. Why should an American citizen, already struggling with domestic inflation and stagnant wages, bear the ultimate financial burden of securing the energy supply chain for nations that refuse to share the cost? I want to know where you stand on this. Drop a comment below and tell me if you believe America should continue to pay the bill for European prosperity while our own infrastructure crumbles. The mainstream press will call this isolationism. Here at Prism News, we call it basic economic common sense. Now we reach the turning point, the information that no major network is willing to touch. The political establishment has made a very clear promise to the American people. They have sworn up and down that this current engagement will be strictly limited to aerial campaigns and offshore deterrence. They have promised that there will be no American boots on the ground, but logistics never lie. Politicians speak in narratives, but military supply chains speak in undeniable facts. Deep in the Indian Ocean lies the highly classified, heavily fortified British territory of Diego Garcia, leased to the United States military. For the past several weeks, independent satellite imagery and leaked procurement manifests have shown a massive, uncharacteristic buildup of amphibious assault equipment at this facility. We are talking about the deployment of specialized marine expeditionary units, the exact forces designed for coastal breaches and sustained terrestrial combat. Furthermore, military contractors have recently expedited the delivery of next-generation close-quarters combat technology, including advanced shockwave devices meant for urban pacification. Why would you stockpile close-quarters urban pacification gear and conduct amphibious landing simulations if the plan is solely to drop precision bombs from 30,000 feet? The answer is chilling. The elite military planners know that you cannot control a region from the air indefinitely. Eventually, to secure the critical energy infrastructure, terrestrial occupation becomes mathematically necessary. They are preparing for a massive ground escalation, and they are using the digital blackout we discussed in Block 1 to position these assets in absolute secrecy. The American public is being deliberately kept in the dark to prevent anti-war sentiment from disrupting the markets before the operation is fully staged. This is the trap. Once the first boots hit the sand, the cost of this conflict will multiply by a factor of 10. The trillion-dollar ground war is being prepared right under our noses, wrapped in the comforting lie of a sterile, remote-controlled operation. Let us pivot from the military staging grounds to the real battlefield where this war will be decided. It is not fought with guns or tanks. It is fought in the quiet, wood-paneled boardrooms of London. You see, the true architects of global inflation are not necessarily the generals. They are the maritime insurance cartels, specifically institutions like Lloyd's of London. When tensions rise in the Persian Gulf and commercial ships are targeted by unknown projectiles, the physical damage to the hull is only the beginning of the economic catastrophe. Immediately, the maritime insurance markets react. The war risk premiums for any vessel attempting to navigate the 21-mile-wide Strait of Hormuz skyrocket overnight. We have seen reports from Reuters detailing how these premiums have multiplied exponentially within a matter of days. To avoid these staggering costs, shipping companies are forced into desperate measures. Many are ordering their captains to turn off their transponders, sailing blind through some of the most dangerous waters on Earth just to bypass the risk assessment algorithms. Others are abandoning the route entirely, opting for massive detours around the Horn of Africa. This adds weeks to transit times, burns millions of gallons of extra bunker fuel, and disrupts the meticulously planned, just-in-time global supply chain. When a supertanker is delayed by 3 weeks, the cost of everything inside it goes up, and it is not just crude oil. It is liquid natural gas, agricultural chemicals, and basic manufacturing components. The insurance cartel adjusts their rates, the shipping conglomerates pass the cost to the distributors pass it to the retailers, and finally, it lands right on your receipt at the local store. The mainstream media will tell you that inflation is a domestic issue caused by consumer spending. That is a distraction. The core of the new inflation supercycle is being dictated by maritime actuaries, pricing in the chaos of a broken geopolitical order. To understand the long game, we must examine the deepest current of the global financial system. Since the 1970s, the dominance of the American economy has been secured by a very specific arrangement known as the Petrodollar system. The agreement was simple. The Middle East would price all of its oil exports exclusively in United States dollars, and in exchange, the American military would guarantee the security of the ruling regimes and the shipping lanes. But the events unfolding right now are fracturing that foundation. By engaging in this aggressive containment strategy, neutralizing infrastructure, and weaponizing the global financial network, we are inadvertently accelerating the very thing we are trying to prevent. Nations across Asia and the global south are watching the chaos in the Gulf and realizing the extreme danger of relying on a dollar-based energy system that can be disrupted by American foreign policy at any moment. This is the petrodollar paradox. In our attempt to secure the region, we are driving our massive geopolitical competitors to build alternative financial pipelines. According to recent white papers from the International Monetary Fund, there is a measurable acceleration in bilateral trade agreements being settled in local currencies, completely bypassing the dollar. If the Middle East burns, the nations that rely on that energy will not stop consuming oil. They will simply change who they buy it from and how they pay for it. The digital smokescreen and the kinetic operations are accelerating a massive shift in global wealth. When the demand for the dollar drops internationally, all of those trillions of dollars floating around the world will eventually come flooding back to American shores, chasing the same amount of goods. That is the recipe for hyperinflation. The real war is not about who controls a bridge outside the capital. It is about who controls the currency in which the future of energy is traded. All of these geopolitical shockwaves eventually crash into one specific building in Washington, the headquarters of the Federal Reserve. Chairman Jerome Powell and the central bank are currently trapped in an impossible nightmare. For the past 2 years, they have been manipulating interest rates, playing a delicate game of economic engineering to try and cool down the domestic economy without triggering a massive recession. But the Federal Reserve has a fatal flaw. They only have tools to control the demand side of the economy. They can make borrowing money more expensive, which slows down housing and corporate investment. But what happens when the inflation is not caused by too much demand, but by a catastrophic collapse in global supply? This is the reality of the situation we are dissecting today. The Federal Reserve cannot print commercial cargo vessels. They cannot print crude oil. They cannot lower maritime insurance premiums, and they cannot magically reopen the Strait of Hormuz. When supply chains break down due to asymmetric warfare and shipping detours, the cost of goods rises regardless of what interest rates are. The Wall Street Journal has noted the growing anxiety among central bankers regarding these external supply shocks. If the Federal Reserve raises rates too high to fight this imported inflation, they will bankrupt American businesses and destroy the labor market. If they lower rates to save the businesses, the inflation from the energy crisis will consume the purchasing power of the working class. We are standing on the precipice of a classic stagflation scenario. Stagnant economic growth combined with massive, uncontrollable price increases. The men and women in suits who dictate our monetary policy are utterly powerless against the harsh physical realities of global logistics and geopolitical conflict. Whenever you are presented with a crisis of this magnitude, whenever the media is demanding your emotional outrage and the politicians are demanding your tax dollars, you must always pause and ask one fundamental question. Who benefits? Because in the world of high finance and geopolitics, chaos is rarely accidental, and it is always profitable for a select few. As the middle class bleeds out through inflation and the national debt reaches astronomical heights, the defense industrial base is experiencing a golden age of profitability. Every time an interceptor missile is launched in the desert, a purchase order is generated in the boardroom of a massive defense contractor. Companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and General Dynamics do not view this conflict as a tragedy. They view it as a robust revenue stream with guaranteed government backing. The strategy of neutralizing infrastructure overseas is particularly lucrative. First, the taxpayers pay the defense companies to build the weapons that dismantle the bridges and power plants. Then, when the dust settles, the taxpayers will be forced to fund the massive international reconstruction contracts to rebuild the exact same infrastructure we just paid to dismantle. It is a perfect closed-loop system of wealth extraction. The shadow beneficiaries are not just defense contractors. They are the massive asset management firms that hold the controlling shares in these corporations. While the average citizen is distracted by the digital smokescreen and the patriotic narratives pushed by the evening news, a quiet, methodical transfer of wealth is taking place. Your purchasing power is being siphoned off to fund a permanent state of global management, creating a class of ultra-wealthy entities that thrive exclusively on perpetual instability. To predict how this current crisis will end, we do not need to look into a crystal ball. We only need to look at the cold, hard, historical data. The concept of applying overwhelming force to compel a rapid surrender, the idea of bombing an opponent into submission, is a seductive political fantasy. But economically and strategically, it is a proven failure. Since the administrations of Carter and Clinton, the United States has relied heavily on sweeping economic sanctions and precision military pressure to achieve geopolitical goals. we have isolated nations, frozen their central bank assets, and crippled their export capabilities. Yet, the regimes we seek to change often remain entrenched, using the external pressure as an excuse to consolidate power and tighten control over their populations. In the modern era of asymmetric warfare, the definition of victory has fundamentally changed. The smaller power does not need to win. They only need to survive and ensure that the cost of the conflict becomes politically and financially unbearable for the larger power. By forcing the United States to deploy billion-dollar carrier strike groups to chase cheap drones and unknown projectiles, the opposition has already achieved their primary objective. They have trapped the American empire in a war of economic attrition. The blackout we see today, the censored news, the optimistic press briefings, these are all symptoms of an establishment that refuses to accept the mathematical impossibility of their strategy. They are selling you the illusion of victory because admitting the truth, acknowledging that the era of uncontested American hegemony is ending, would shatter the financial markets and end political careers. We have peeled back the layers. We have exposed the digital smokescreen, the betrayal by our European allies, the hidden preparations in Diego Garcia, and the devastating financial mechanisms that are transferring wealth from your pocket to the defense cartels and maritime insurance giants. The mainstream media will never give you this perspective because they are an integral part of the system that benefits from your ignorance. But here at Prism News, we believe that critical knowledge is the ultimate shield. We are entering a highly volatile period in global history. The era of cheap energy, stable supply chains, and low inflation is decisively over. The geopolitical tectonic plates are shifting, and the resulting financial earthquakes will destroy the wealth of those who remain unprepared. You must recognize that fiat currency, the paper money in your bank account, is going to be systematically devalued to pay for these global misadventures. The smart money, the institutional wealth, is already repositioning. They are moving away from vulnerable paper assets and securing positions in tangible commodities, domestic energy production, and resilient infrastructure. You need to start thinking like an institution. Audit your own financial exposure to inflation and consider how you can build a personal wealth shield. I want to hear from you. What is your strategy for navigating the coming stagflation, and what are your thoughts on the complete lack of support from NATO in this crisis? Sound off in the comments below. Let us build a community of critical thinkers. If you value this level of independent, unfiltered analysis, make sure you subscribe to Prism News and share this video with someone who needs to wake up from the mainstream matrix. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and I will see you in the next deep dive.